Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this panel on sustainable AI. Thank you so much for attending. My name is Ghjulia. I'm a PhD student at the THAI Center researching how AI can help us map carbon stocks from space, and I'm your moderator today. It is so important for us to be having this conversation today, trying to reconcile the seemingly paradoxical natures of AI, both as this giant entity that consumes an enormous and increasing amount of energy, while simultaneously being this solution for reducing and responding to climate change. As a PhD student navigating this fast-changing field, I am very grateful to be sitting here today with experts on the field, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from your individual perspectives on what the future of AI can look like for a sustainable future. So without further ado, I'll briefly introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is Himanshu Gupta, co-founder and CEO of ClimateAi. Himanshu works on climate risk forecasting and adaptation at scale. He helps organizations across food, agriculture, and the global supply chain anticipate disruption, strengthen resilience, and make better climate-aware decisions. Our second speaker is Varun Sivaram, founder and CEO of Emerald AI. Varun's company develops AI solutions to make data centers flexible, grid-supportive assets, unlocking capacity and reducing energy stress. He brings expertise across clean energy innovation, high-growth technology leadership, and climate diplomacy. Our third speaker is Enselme, independent board advisor and co-author of the Net Positive AI Energy framework. Eric has also co-authored multiple no excuse white papers from the Industry Net Zero Accelerator initiative, and his work focuses on the operational and governance playbooks that help companies move from commitments to measurable impact. Thank you all for being here with us. Before we begin, please don't wait on me to call on you. Feel free to bounce off of each other ideas. This is a discussion. And yeah, I'll dive right in. And my first question is for Himanshu. We talk about climate change as this future threat, but you're seeing the front lines of food systems every day. Where are climate pressures most visible and most disruptive to global supply chains today?
Thanks, Julia. When we talk about climate change, we talk about in terms of 2050, 2100, right? And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we've ever done from a communication standpoint. And I'll come back to your pressure point as well about food and agriculture, because when we say by 2050, the world will be 2.5 degrees, it doesn't mean anything. When we travel to the farms, when we travel to talk to food companies and processors, the real way climate change is showing up is increase in volatility. That's one. And two is companies, for any company, like CFO or a chief procurement officer, they care about volatility. So what we are saying is how volatility matters, right? So let's say if you are a farmer, you are used to dealing with crop losses once in 10 years because you have balance sheets, you have savings that you can recover from 1 year of losses, or maybe at max 2 years of losses. Now what is happening is sometimes within a span of 5 years, you're seeing 3 consecutive years of losses. And so there is the adaptive capacity of farmers is not there. And as a result, many farmers are declaring bankruptcy or leaving farming altogether, right? So that's the real narrative of climate change we should be having around volatility. And then why volatility matters for companies that these farmers supplies to. Let's say if a potato farmer is supplying to PepsiCo, right? For that potato gets converted into a Frito-Lay product for producing chips. Now, PepsiCo cares about volatility in their supply chains. So if they are not sure if this big supplier or this big farmer is going to be able to supply consistently and reliably this year or next year and next year, now they need to do something about it. And so that's a discussion we are seeing among food companies as well, where I was part of a breakfast meeting organized by the CEO of PepsiCo. There were 12 other food company CEOs. There were 3 agendas, and one agenda was climate volatility and climate resilience as a business case.
Great, thank you. My second question is for Varun. I want to ask you, where do we stand in terms of grid capacity versus the growing demand of AI compute, and what's the impact on energy costs, among others?
Thanks. Thanks to AI House for doing this. Hi, everybody. I don't know about you, but I had lunch. I'm feeling a little sleepy. So I think we all need to get a little high energy. I'm going to do my best to pep us all up. Why? Because I'm super excited and anxious about what the AI age holds. We're at the beginning of what I consider an AI super cycle. I went on record 2 days ago here in Davos with Axios, and I said, humanity's built less than 1% of the compute we're going to need. It's likely less than 1/10 of a percent of the compute we're going to need. So to your question, where are we in terms of grid capacity? We are woefully inadequate. I'll give you some numbers. In the next 3 years, America, where I'm coming from, America wants to plug in 50 gigawatts worth of AI data centers. We will successfully be able to plug in 25. Around the world, this is playing out. There's only one country in the world that doesn't have this problem. You can guess which one it is. By 2030 in China, there will be 400 gigawatts of spare capacity for China to plug in AI data centers. China does not have a power bottleneck. The rest of the world does. China has a chips bottleneck. America has a power bottleneck. So does Europe, so does India, so does the United Kingdom. That's why we exist, because there's 100 gigawatts of spare capacity just lying around, stranded on America's grid today. We aren't ready today to unlock that spare capacity, and we certainly aren't ready to compete with China in terms of the massive energy generation and grid build-out that they have successfully accomplished. And we need new solutions. And the point of this panel as well is to ensure that those solutions are both competitive, keep prices low for communities, and are sustainable. And if we want to be sustainable, the marginal new addition of capacity today for AI happens to be for natural gas in the US and coal in India. So there has to be a better way forward. Happy to talk about it in a moment when we get back around, but Emerald AI, the company I lead, tries to enable data centers to be more flexible grid citizens such that they can connect to grids faster, take advantage of that 100 gigawatts of spare capacity in America and hundreds more around the world, and integrate clean sources of energy. You can do all three in a win-win-win scenario.
Thank you, Varun. Eric, you co-authored the Net Positive AI Energy Framework. What needs to change in design, governments, and incentives so AI strengthens the energy systems instead of straining them?
First, I would say a problem well defined is already half solved. So it's super important that we actually bring together a shared understanding of the reality. And we clearly are at an inflection point. This is a time of the year where not only there is a Davos forum, but actually there is an annual publication of the Global Risks Report. I really encourage all of you to peruse that report because it is number one, second to none in terms of thoroughness, span of risks. And if you did already glance at it, probably you would have picked up that indeed, as Varun alluded to, there is a huge data center energy demand increase planned by 2030 to 2035 to the point that the estimations are that data centers will consume 20% of the global energy. 20%. In the US alone, the same report highlights that the AI, purely the AI data-driven energy would be multiplied by 30 folds. 30 folds. And all this happens at a time where every day, as Himanshu, you alluded to, it's not in 2050, it's every day you see how extreme weather events are actually multiplying impacting not only people, but the energy infrastructure, which happen to be quite aging across the world. And on top of that, we are seeing a number of increasing grid strains. So what we need, if we all recognize that the conversation is that now AI has become an energy story, and even if you don't care about the planet, but you do care about the economy, which somehow should be the same. How do you want to make a business in a world where people don't thrive, can't properly live or breathe? So what do we need? We clearly need a systemic intervention and something that allows people to shape a dialogue across not just one element about, yeah, AI can save 10% energy or help here, but the total net effect of AI is positive. A bit like if you are on an executive board, nobody cares about whether you do that saving if at the end of the day the bottom line is not where it should be, right? So the net positive AI energy framework is articulated across three simple, you don't need to be an expert, drivers. The first one is design for efficiency. So clearly designing AI for efficiency is key because number one, it actually helps, the hyperscalers, the tech providers, but obviously it helps also the overall infrastructure. You don't need that much energy. And that's basically the race that I would trust most of the technology companies are already doing by themselves. And Emerald AI is one of the companies that can actually help them going even faster. That's absolutely critical. Whether you talk about, high efficiency technology or obviously renewable siting, that's the first thing. The second one is deploy for impact. AI can actually be a huge enabler in terms of how we save energy. Just to give you an element, for those of you who follow a little bit about renewable energy, you know that one of the key constraints is what we call renewable curtailment. The time when you can't actually use that energy because it's not the demand doesn't match the supply. With AI, we can actually cut by more than 20% the current renewable curtailment. So using AI and deploying it for that impact is the second leg. But the third one is actually equally important. It's shape demand responsibly. And we'll talk that probably later, but to shape demand responsibly, you need to have a combination of both technology and education. So basically, if power has now become the new constraint, as you highlighted, resiliency becomes the ROI.
I think just to highlight, the points, the seriousness of the points that my co-panelists have made. If you remember, 2 years ago, there were 8 to 10 retailers in Europe, energy retailers in London, that went bankrupt, and the lack of energy became the affordability and cost of living crisis story in London. And you know the reason why? In the North Sea, winds stopped blowing for a week. We call them wind droughts. And most of the European grid was running at 30 to 40% renewable back then. Suddenly, the grid could not handle that much of imbalance between demand and supply. So prices went up. And then the retailers could not pass on the cost to the consumers, and there were bankruptcies. Now you add another layer of these data centers to that. You're not even talking about emerging market. We're talking about Europe as a grid. We are looking at a very a serious story here.
Thank you all for setting the scene. Going back to what you were saying, I want to ask Himanshu and Varun. In the intro, I mentioned how AI can help us reduce and mitigate climate change, and I wanted to ask you, could you elaborate as to why AI was the key to both of the businesses you built and some of the measurable impacts it enabled?
Yeah. We think of AI as the time and effectiveness multiplier to the solutions of climate change, right? And I won't take too much time here. Just to demonstrate, look at a light bulb above you and on the ceiling. Is there a light bulb here? Okay. Can anyone guess why that light bulb, the history of light bulb, is also a symbolic of the rapid progress AI is making in the solutions to climate change? Any guesses? I'm sorry?
The height.
Height?
Is it much more efficient now than it used to be?
You're getting there, but that's not. Anyone else? Any guesses? Okay, so light bulbs were invented by the Edison labs. Edison and his lab mates. And it took them like 4 years to go from like a prototype to commercialization. And the reason being, they were trialing close to, like they had to conduct 1,200 trials before they could actually say that this is the material in the filament that I could use, I can withstand 45 degrees Celsius or like 60 degrees Celsius. Until then, they had to keep on like, they kept on like experimenting with multiple materials, and they couldn't find an answer. It took them 3 or 4 years to find that answer, right? Now imagine if the Edison labs had the current AI tools, this would have been done in minutes. Like you could simulate what materials will perform under the best in these heat and temperature environments. So we use the same solution for seed industry, right? We have, it takes 10 to 12 years to launch climate resilient seeds into the market. And one of the biggest delays in those launch is for the seed companies to figure out where to conduct trials. So if I want to launch a climate resilient tomato seed for farmers in Zambia, I need to figure out where should I be conducting trials to understand whether this seed will perform the best under Zambia's temperature conditions. So what seed companies do is they literally send teams of 4 or 5 each across 10 different locations. These teams will set up camps, collect a lot of soil data, water data for like almost 2 years, send it back to the headquarters, and then the headquarters will conduct analysis based on historically that, okay, this location seems like this is the best location, right? What we do is like, okay, can you just draw a circle on the map where you want to launch your seed, and then we'll automatically extract and sort of think of this as Control C and Control V, and we can exactly figure out under climate change what are the right locations for you to conduct trials. So instead of conducting 10 trials, you can just conduct 2 or 3 trials. So the time it takes to launch that climate resilient seeds reduces by 20%, and the cost also reduces by 12%, right? So now this platform, we call that like climate analog, is being used by 30% of the seed industry.
This is a key question you've asked, right? Everyone came here to learn, hey, is AI going to be a climate disaster, or is there hope? And so Himanshu just shared with us this really helpful story of how, well, if there is a climate disaster, at least AI is going to help us to be resilient towards some of these damages, right? And AI is also, we hope, going to help us to develop revolutionary new materials to accelerate clean energy, whether it's nuclear fusion or solid-state batteries or carbon capture. But in the near term, we were just talking about how AI is going to explode in terms of its energy demand. You said the Deloitte figure, 30-fold. That's insane, right? In the United States, I think the other figure you said was 20% of global energy. I hadn't even heard that figure. 20% of global energy is going to come from AI. That's insane. And today, it's all coming predominantly from fossil fuels. There's no way you get to net zero emissions anytime this century if AI does that, right? So Emerald AI, I believe, is one of these solutions to make AI and clean energy compatible. Here's what we do. We're an NVIDIA-backed startup. We've been around for about a year. And what we do is we take these AI data centers and we flex their power. The reason that's important for an AI data center to reduce its power every so often is because if you can do that, you can fit your data center on an existing grid without overbuilding that grid or that generation to meet a higher and higher peak load. Think about the grid as a superhighway. It's empty most of the time. It faces, bless you, peak load 2 times a month, right? So most of the time, most of the lanes on the road are empty. That's like the grid. Power lines are running at less than full capacity. Power generators are running at less than full capacity. And so you take a data center and it's flexible. And at the worst, bless you, moment of the year or of the month, that data center is going to reduce by 25%. We do it in one of three ways. You can slow down computations, like a fine-tuning run on a model that doesn't need to terminate right now. You can move workloads, like inference workloads, from one location to another. That's called spatial flexibility. So you have temporal flexibility, spatial flexibility. And third, there's resource flexibility. You might have a battery on site that provides you some on-site power, and you can draw less from the grid. If you can do that, you can fit your AI onto existing grids. You don't have to expand firm dispatchable generation, which often comes from natural gas or coal. And finally, because your load is flexible, it becomes easier for that grid to integrate clean, intermittent sources of energy. Today, the fastest, cheapest source of energy is renewable energy, solar and wind. And it's easier to pull those onto the grid. And so you can imagine AI going from 0 to 20% of global energy, or growing 30-fold, could be a disaster if it is inflexible and you only power it with fossil fuels. But it could be a miracle or a savior if it is flexible in such a way that it both protects the integrity of the AI, because that's really important, but it also makes the grid more resilient and tolerant to intermittent and clean sources of energy, right? That way, we unlock not just abundant clean energy, we actually make it cheaper and easier to bring clean energy, because today, the hardest part about clean energy, I know I come from the clean energy industry, the hardest part about renewables is there's no one to buy your power because it's so volatile. That's what EmeraldAI does. We're excited. The last thing I'll say is later this year with NVIDIA, we will announce, we'll open, we've already announced it, we'll open the world's first power flexible AI factory or data center. It's 100 megawatts in Virginia. And we expect that the next 1,000 data centers then can be built to that reference specification. I'm super excited.
Thank you. I just want to circle back on something you said, and maybe moving away from AI solutions to potential barriers to adoption. I want to ask, so you've explained how data centers can support the grid, but specifically what barriers are still slowing this down? Are you seeing any resistance?
Totally. Because this is not the way we've done things for a century, right? For a century, the electric power industry has said, hey, consumers, you're kind of dumb. I'm going to power you, and I'm not going to rely on you to change your behavior, right? So if you walk into your bedroom, you turn on your light, the utility's not asking you to change how you turn on your light. Actually, in Europe, they do a better job of this than in America. And on the other side, the data center industry says, hey, I want to be able to use power whenever I want to. I'm like the cool kid in school. I'm the most important person there is. I deserve my power, give it to me, and I don't want any compromises. Both of these sides have to change a little bit. Not much, but just a little bit. The AI industry needs to be a little more tolerant to flexibility, where it's able to say to its AI compute customers, look, we can have many times more data centers, and they'll be grid-friendly and community-friendly and drive down costs. But every so often, when we hit that peak load moment, a hot summer day in Phoenix, Arizona, where all the air conditioners are running, you've got to be okay with the 25% power cap. Emerald, by the way, makes it possible to do so by gracefully orchestrating those workloads so the highest priority workloads continue full tilt. And the utilities need to say, hey, if you offer me this capability, I'll connect you faster. Both sides need to compromise and change the way they've historically operated. That's, in my opinion, the principal barrier. Regulators can really help by saying, new connection methodologies. If you're a flexible data center, you get to go to the front of the line. We'll connect you faster because we want more of you, and we want less of the inflexible data centers. That's a policy approach to really drive this change.
Thank you. Eric, in the report you mentioned the Jevons paradox. So I want to ask you, when scaling AI, how do we prevent rebound effects from actually canceling out efficiency gains?
This is a super important point because, as was alluded earlier, if you isolate efficiency gain, you can certainly, be quite enthusiastic about the prospect of AI. But I would go back to what working with board is the typical question. At the end of the day, what is the net effect? Whether that's dollar, CO2, water, communities impact. So in that context, it's really important to keep in mind two very simple but absolutely critical things for all of you and all of the ecosystem provider in AI to keep in mind. The first one is the Jevons paradox. We've seen that before with the invention of electricity at the beginning of the 20th century, or recently with internet, and now with AI. What is the Jevons paradox? The cheaper and faster you make a technology available, the more we use it. Example, ChatGPT, 5 days to get to 1 million, 2 months to get to 100 million. All records broken, right? That's the evidence that the Jevons paradox actually, cancel any efficiency benefit that AI can bring right now because just of the demand explosion. The second element, which is not talked well enough, and which is not, by the way, specific to AI, but which is exacerbated by AI, is dark data. Dark data is basically all the data that we collect and that we don't use. 2 years ago, there was a report by Spunk, you can check it out, 24-25, that actually called out that 55% of the data collected by enterprise are either not leveraged nor analyzed. Think about, as a supply chain person, do you want to have 55% of your inventory that is not used at all or not sold? Wow. Okay? So when you think about those two elements, it's really important to keep that in mind because right now, and we alluded to that, the backlash already started at local level. There was an article in Newsweek back in August talking about the eye-popping price increase of energy in some states in America. There were equal reports about 22% energy bill increase in Ireland. And there is actually a YouTube video by Business Insider about the dark side of the data center, which are the consequence of the AI revolution about, the noise, the pollution. So it's really tangible what is happening and how we need to basically adjust that curve because I am totally with Varun and with Himanshu. AI is a major breakthrough that we must embrace to actually go sustainable. So how do we go there? Basically, 3 high-level directions. The first one is right size. A number of technology providers have actually started to think about how do they route. So let's say that you want to say, where do I get to the conference center? Do you need, the super heavy 1 zillion parameters, GenAI to tell you that, or do you just need a Google answer, right? So the first thing is right size the model. The second thing is compute at the right time and at the right moment, which Varun already explained. And the third element is measure and educate. That is super important. How do we send price signals both to the consumers and to companies about what is the bottom line effect of the AI energy consumption you have, not just a vanilla type of price where you don't see the costs and the total footprint of the AI consumption you are having. So basically, if data is the new oil, dark data is the leak, and Jevons paradox is just exacerbating that leak.
Thank you, Eric. Just following up on that, AI efficiency is often opaque. We're seeing initiatives that are trying to promote transparency, but how do we measure it credibly so that efficiency becomes a real lever and not just a slogan?
So we are at the start of it, and it's not yet done, but there are a number of conversations happening now because to answer your question, basically, the first thing you need to have a standard way of measuring the overall multidimensional life cycle footprint of AI. In the AI energy, net positive AI energy framework report, if you check it out, Accenture, which has been a partner of that report, a brilliant partner, has deployed last summer the sustainable AI quotient. That is a simple metrics that blends financial, energy consumption, CO2 emission, and water, because water is very important. So we need to start having, a coalition of both, tech providers, industry leaders, and obviously governments that agree on, hey, this is now the new way of measuring a mileage efficiency for a car and now for AI. So that's the first one. The second one is obviously tied to incentives. And that could be, governments actually incentivizing highly efficient, hyperscaler, tech providers, and obviously efficiency in terms of price signal for the consumers. So that's basically, I think we are at the point where, by necessity, the anti-AI ecosystem is going to need to start measuring that. And there was a report a few months ago about Google, who actually proudly displayed, how much they were progressing in terms of energy efficiency and carbon footprint. Nobody forced them to do that. Actually, they started talking about it, and I think we need more of that.
Thank you. Continuing on potential barriers, Himanshu, I want to ask you, how do you build trust in predictions that cannot be perfect, right? Specifically, like how does your team bridge the gap between a probable climate risk and then a concrete business decision for your clients?
That's the hardest part, building trust. So one of the central values of our company is trust. So what that means is, when we go to our customers, like seed companies, we tell them, A, what the model can do, B, what the model cannot do. Number one. Number two is, finance industry is the only industry that knows how to act on uncertainty. But rest of the society is not comfortable with it, right? So as an example, if I tell some of you that there's a 30% chance of life-threatening hailstorms happening in the next 15 minutes, you'll ask me, like, what do I do with this? Right? Tell me, is it happening or not happening, right? So when we go to the industry and we say, like, look, we cannot tell you that it's happening or not happening. But if you're optimizing your decisions around something, so for example, in our case, many food companies, when they are buying products from 6 different regions, in a lot of it, they're acting as mutual fund managers, right? Maybe our model would be wrong in one place, but if you look at the entire portfolio, our projections will be more than right? Similar, as good as like you have a mutual fund investment, instead of investing in a stock, you invest in an index or a mutual fund and say, like, over the next 10 years, this is going to give me this much return. So that's the approach we take. And even this approach required a lot of evangelization. We sat down with our users on the fields, on the farms, in their labs, and explained to them, this is what it means, this is how you act on uncertainty.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all for your insights. I would like to maybe take a step back, look at the global picture, look ahead. And I want to ask you, in the global race for AI supremacy, sustainability is often seen as an obstacle, not necessarily an edge. So in a fragmented world, how do we create a cross-sector, cross-country common vision where sustainable AI is actually a competitive requirement rather than an obstacle? And I'd like to hear all of your thoughts on it.
Sure. Happy to jump in here. Look, guys, the reason that we haven't solved climate change and that we're really far away from solving it is this tension. It's really hard to be sustainable and competitive at the same time. I know, we have a lot of people in the climate community, some politicians on the left will say, they're the same thing. If you're green, you're going to make a lot of money. A lot of countries disagree. If you're Saudi Arabia and you go green, you're going to lose a lot of oil revenue. It is not the case for many countries that if you are competitive, it is the exact same thing as being sustainable. And so many countries look at this and they say, hey, I'm India, and I really don't want to spend the amount of capital infrastructure it takes to switch over from dirty energy to clean energy overnight. It's just really freaking expensive. Sure, in the long run, it might help me solve air pollution, and it might be cheaper in the long run, but like, it's really hard. And I just want to focus on being a competitive global economy, because as everybody knows, after the year we've had, the global economy and the world order is sort of anarchic, and it's a dogfight out there. So you better be competitive or you'll get eaten. Now we're in this AI race. And we talked earlier on about how countries are trying to build AI as fast as possible so they can be competitive. The United States and China are locked in an AI race, and they're trying to win, right? But I see this as an enormous opportunity for us to align, as you said, sustainability and solving climate change with being competitive and innovative in AI. I think it's a sea change, and it's for two reasons. The first reason is clean and abundant energy kind of go together in my futuristic sci-fi view of the world, right? can you believe it? We still rely on dinosaur remains for our fuels. It's kind of crazy, right? Obviously, the better way to produce energy in a sci-fi techno-utopian future is to use the limitless energy of the sun. We have a fusion reactor in outer space, either through solar energy, maybe in space or on Earth, or through nuclear energy, or through fusion energy. All of these are technically more advanced technologies than burning dinosaur remains. AI helps us unlock the best of these technologies. It helps us to develop next generation clean technologies, next generation solar materials, battery materials, and even nuclear fission and fusion advances. And the second reason is what we're doing at Emerald AI and what others are doing. I think Google's a pioneer in this field, which is what if AI data centers aren't these black boxes? You know, they just use energy whenever they want to. What if AI data centers actually become what we call grid assets? I think you said this earlier on, grid assets. They're not black boxes anymore, but they're really grid aware, and they're able to either throttle down their computations or move their computations at the speed of light around the world. We've never had an energy user that can do this, right? You can't take your electric vehicle and drive it across the country at the speed of light, but you can do it with AI workloads. And when it becomes 20, 25% of the grid, AI could be a real force for integrating clean energy. So in two ways, AI drives materials advances that make clean energy the most abundant and cheap energy. And then there's no question, if you're a country and you're like, oh my God, you're telling me I can have cheap and limitless clean energy, I definitely want that thing. That's not true today, but AI could make it possible. And second, AI data centers themselves become the force for integrating the cheapest and most abundant energy onto the grid because they're active grid citizens. Then you've aligned sustainability and climate. I'll close. Last night, I did the New York Times debate. The debate was, AI will succeed where humanity has failed. And I said, AI is going to succeed on climate change. Humanity's failed. I think it was a very European audience because I was booed. But I sincerely believe it because I sincerely believe that the problem on climate change is not that we have the wrong political coordination or political will. We're never going to solve it if it's just too darn expensive. AI potentially makes it way cheaper.
You know, I sort of disagree with you, Varun. Both of us have been former policymakers, right? You're in the US government, I've been in the Indian government, right? My view is we are not going to solve climate change at all now. That bus has passed. And you know why? Look at the budget deficit numbers of all the countries, including US, Europe, India. Forget China. I don't know how to define budget deficit of China when they can print whatever money they want. All of these countries are running massive budget deficits, number one. Number two, suddenly the priorities have changed, right? We have to invest in AI, otherwise we're going to be left behind. So think about like hundreds of billions of dollars of investments that countries have to make just to stay in the AI race. And third is, I mean, given the times we are in, a lot of funding is also going to defense, right? And I posed this question in a panel to a couple of ministers from Europe, right? And you can see the panel, moderated by Vice President Al Gore. So if there's no money, how do we solve climate change? There's no money whatsoever. So that's one. Two is, as we think about priorities, don't get me wrong, I am a Silicon Valley optimist. I totally believe that AI can solve everything, right? All the human problems, food, health, access, education. But I'm also a former policymaker. I'm also someone who grew up in a lower middle class family. I'm also someone who had got admitted into an engineering school in India, but did not see laptop until I was 19 years of age, or a computer or desktop, right? Now, for my family, back then there was a lot of same race around internet. .com, countries will be left behind, right? If you were to ask my family, what is your priority? Is getting internet and getting access to the internet your priority? Or like ensuring that, for my dad, he can get enough money to pay for his kids' education? That's the priority. And his answer will be very different. What are you talking about, internet, right? So I think we have to think about, as you think about systems modeling, right? Let's include people. and societies and their progress in the systems modeling as well, right? For something, as I said, like, I'm very much an optimist. A lot of the gains have been made by AI already, and in healthcare, in medicine, in our work for seed development and so on and so forth. But some of this is like some of the optimism I just don't understand. Can anyone? How many of you fold your own laundries? Do you really want a robot to fold your laundries?
Yes.
But why?
Why not?
But why? Like in the bigger scheme of things, like the externality on the system it's causing, right? Because we have to now develop robots and humanoids that can do our household chores while we become, quote unquote, more productive. I debate that. In what ways will we become more productive? But we want robots to fold our laundries, and that's why the world should invest in more and more AI. I just don't get it. Maybe like I'm the odd one out, but I just don't get it. So that's the point being, can we use people, progress, and society into the systems modeling? The way now we are modeling, like the way you are modeling AI and energy and water in that system.
So, where to start? No, so many great insights. So first, Himanshu, you just talked about impact first. Should we need a nuclear-powered plant AI system so that our kids or ourselves can create a purple cat that surfs on Lake Léman? Yes. I don't think so. Should we have such system to actually help companies, societies to improve our standards of living and decarbonize the world and make the planet better? Absolutely. So I am absolutely a technology believer. I'm an engineer at heart, but we first need to be very choiceful about where do we center the impact. Now, to get back to the question about how do we make sustainability more affordable, first, I think we should question, each of you should question, if you have not already done, the narrative. Because actually, Bain, not this leftist company, Bain just published, what most CEOs are actually doing in terms of sustainability. They have not dropped the ball, not at all. They have just dropped the level at which they speak about it. But in fact, organically, they are even more convinced about the importance and the urgency of working towards sustainable and resiliency. So the common denominator is really about resiliency. How do you make sure you adapt to that? The second element is that there are more than one, there are actually a growing number of companies, IKEA is one of them, where they clearly publish how they continue to increase their profit and decrease their carbon footprint. So I absolutely challenge the fact that you can't do sustainability and be profitable and competitiveness. I don't subscribe to that. The third element is, when you look at the reality, it's not just because of energy. Actually, AI is exacerbating another system that on its own, because of the climate change, is becoming scarcer: water. So it's not even about energy, it's about water accessibility. So this is the reason why AI is absolutely a technology that I believe in and that I believe can definitely help resolve many of the most complex things that the world has not been able to do. Misinformation is exacerbated by AI, but you had misinformation before AI. And interestingly, AI can help you counter misinformation or cybersecurity like humans can do. So that's something that shows that, yes, AI can do and achieve things that we could not do before. But you basically need to start having interoperable measurement that creates a common standard for people to talk the same thing about AI energy footprint, and really creating the sense of necessity. If the reality of today is that AI is now becoming a liability in terms of instead of an asset, we have a challenge. And that's clearly what people are starting to report through the Global Risk Report. They actually showcase that the unintended consequence of AI is becoming now a high level of risk and of trust challenge. So that's really something we need to keep in mind.
Look, I just very quickly, there are a couple things that each of my co-panelists said that make me deeply uncomfortable. So I just want to call this out. This is fun. We're going to have a fun debate here. First, should robots fold your laundry? Look, I don't know if they should or shouldn't, but if there's market demand for robots to fold your laundry, gosh darn, we should absolutely let private companies create robots to fold your laundry. And should AI be used and use a ton of energy to generate purple cats on lakes? Well, gosh darn, if there's private sector market demand to do so, you better believe we should let that happen. You know, the second wave of AI was driven by cat images. Many of you probably know this. Fei-Fei Li, who's an investor in Emerald AI, Professor Fei-Fei Li, created ImageNet, created this repository, and cat image recognition was one of the main ways that we trained our early neural networks. Yes, absolutely. The free market works really well. I'm from America, so maybe that's why I'm so passionate about the subject, but the free market works very well. We should absolutely have AI get better at folding laundry, at recognizing cats, at doing economically useful jobs. There's basically no job that humans do today that AI should not be doing in 10, 20, 30, or 50 years. And the progress that we sacrifice by attempting to put artificial guardrails on AI could be shocking and immoral in terms of the poverty it would otherwise alleviate. I feel extremely strongly about this. I know we got to go to questions.
No, we can't eat AI. We can't drink AI, right? We need food. We need water, right? The question is not about like we're putting guardrails around AI. The question is, where are we prioritizing our resources?
The three of us have no business prioritizing anything. That's for the market to do.
But how do you define market? But hold on. You know, the founders of Instagram can also say like, we created market demand for Reels, like endless scrolling.
Incredible product.
Because kids need that, right? That's the demand we need created. Kids need to keep on scrolling for ages. And you can define this as market demand. But is this really a market demand? Market is where suppliers and buyers have transparent information or the impacts a particular transaction can make. I don't think it's actually a true market.
Do you guys want a world without Instagram? I mean, really?
No, I just.
This gentleman says yes. So
No, I don't think any of us actually has, you know, I said it loud and clear. I am a deep believer of the technology, of not just AI, but I'm an engineer at heart. We just need to shape the dialogue in a way that people who are leaders in society, in companies, in tech providers can actually have a common understanding of what are the problems at stake. And I do see a parallel challenge in both the economy and sustainability. Absolutely. As I said it earlier, you don't have a wealthy and thriving economy if the climate impact continues to challenge our infrastructure, the health of people. So it's actually in the interest of all of us. There is no opposition. In fact, this is what I believe. There is no opposition. It's just a way of being smart in how we progress together. The choices we make today about how do we steer AI use will make it either an asset, which I truly hope it's going to become, or a liability. But we are the one adjusting the cursor. And when I say we, it's not like Varun, Himanshu, or myself. It's we as a collectivity. It's the ecosystem. This is why it is so important to have a dialogue. That's the spirit of dialogue of Davos. And we can agree to disagree. And I don't think we disagree actually that much. I think we all want, with different lens, but we all want AI to be super successful and to drive prosperity, shared prosperity. We all know that economy thrives when people are, having a trust in how much they can benefit from it. Actually, you quoted China. It's striking. Check it out. There is the AI transformation report showing the difference of perception between China and India and Asia in general in terms of how do they trust technology, and Europe and even in the US. And why? Because the perception and the hypothesis actually put on the table by Howard Yu, who is a professor at IMD, is that China has managed to create an overall ecosystem of technology, regulation, energy that make everybody feeling like it's working for everyone, as opposed to not working for everyone. So that's really what matters.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the lively debate. Maybe we have time for one quick question, and then we'll have to wrap up. Sure.
Thank you very much. This is a question for our kind of journalist. I cover energy. I was really curious if you could elaborate on what you said about AI being able to cut by more than 20% the current renewable curtailment. Is this applicable to Europe as well? Are the figures different in Europe? And by what year could this be achieved? And also, how will this affect electricity prices? I mean, what benefit will it bring? What euro megawatt hour cost savings for renewables operators, if you have some data?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. So obviously, the net positive AI energy framework is not just a theory. We are trying to show with supported use cases. So there is actually attached to the report a database made of already 145 use cases today. One of them actually articulates clearly how today, with such technology, you can achieve that 20% renewable curtailment. So it's not spread across the entire country or across all regions, but it's already existing. So the collective benefit, which I think we all talked about, if steered towards the same direction, which again, it's not the climate activist stuff, it's actually for the greater good of the economy, that can actually play in everybody's favor. So it's already reality. How fast it scales, it probably depends on how much people are aware about the criticality of it and its benefit.
I totally agree with this. And I'll also say, I think we kind of manufactured a debate for your entertainment, but we really agree on most things. Just very quickly on your point, I'm really excited looking out into the future about how the network of data centers can act as a parallel and complementary grid to our current electricity grid, right? In addition to these examples of avoiding renewable curtailment, imagine a world where you're able to move computations around a country and around a continent and around the world at the speed of light, such that they're computed in the areas with the lowest marginal cost of energy, or the highest availability, or the lowest grid strain. Naturally, that tends to line up with clean energy generation, and it tends to mitigate curtailment, right? This was an idea I had 10 years ago when I wrote a book, Taming the Sun, about the future of solar energy. I said, wow, wouldn't it be nice if we could take the consumption of solar electrons and move that consumption, the data, to where the electrons are, instead of trying to move the electrons on these impossible to build transmission lines. Our grid is ailing. Our fiber optic network is booming. And the AI data centers and fiber optic networks, I believe, are going to add the superstructure that really strengthens a grid and makes it possible for clean energy to flourish. That's my optimistic take. If you don't believe it, please pretend you do, because today's my birthday, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
You had a follow-up question, Varun.
No,
I've got to jump off. I'm so sorry for meeting, but thank you.
No worries.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, we're running out of time. Our speakers have busy schedules, so I want to thank our panelists for the time and the wisdom they shared with us. I want to thank the audience for attending, and yeah, have a great day at the AI House.
Thanks.